Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Carl Carlson.
Hey, Carl. Yeah, we just kind of saved ourselves there, so we hit record real quick. I was talking to a young software engineer just the other day, and it was just, there was a sense of fear of looking for another position while in a position, as it would signal that they're not happy with what they're doing. And I don't know, well, you're happy with what you're doing? Well, no, not really. And so it goes back to what I mentioned in the last one, when you're working inside a company and looking for going to somewhere else, is, well, get on the list that shows openings. Talk to your boss about what would you like to do in 5 years, or what field or area would you like to get into. If you have a rational manager, they will take that as a sign that you want to grow and contribute more and continue to be an excellent employee and all these other good things. Whereas if you just put head down and suffer through each day and wake up and dread getting to work, that comes through. That shows up in the quality of your work and your approach to work, to what you take on. And so what we wanted to talk about in this episode was, well, what if you're thinking about changing companies? And the same first piece of advice that I would give is you should always be looking, always looking.
Well, and let me share a story on that in my own past. And this goes to a point in early at General Motors. There was a point, and I won't go into a lot of detail about it, but I wasn't entirely happy with the opportunities that I had. I had reached kind of a level where the then boss was old school and didn't seem to want me to take on more opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, okay, so I can just hunker down and do my best. And what I did is I got my resume up to date, and I went out and I actually did a job search, not with the idea of changing jobs, which I could have. I mean, mm-hmm. I could have, but to satisfy myself what I was worth, what was the value of what I could contribute. And so I went to, this is back when I was managing a test lab at General Motors, and I went and looked at some other test labs in the area and did some interviews and got some really nice offers. I decided to turn them down, but my confidence took a real boost mm-hmm. because it was no longer me against the world. I could see that if things did not go the way I wanted them, I had alternatives. Yeah. And I think options are always good. And that's kind of what I think you were saying.
Well, there's that. I definitely agree. And then you might, if you're not looking, you're not going to find that dream job. It's mm-hmm. rare that somebody taps you on their shoulders. Hey, we want to make you this XYZ job that I knew from our barbecue last week that you're interested in. If you're not even thinking about it or talking about it, if you don't, I remember when I was laid off at Raychem, they put us in touch with recruiters or headhunters is not the right word. The people that helped you find a new position, kind of thing. It was they had some fancy name for it, and they did the first thing they did. It was sat down and says, "Well, what's your dream job? Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? What intersects what you're good at, what you're excited about doing, and actually is useful, and kind of thing." And I wrote a resume and got 4 offers in the next week, despite their advice. But the point is that, well, you say it all the time, Carl. You cite Covey as, keep the end in mind, or
where do you want to be?
Yeah. What excites you? What do you want to work on? What would be cool, and all those things. But part of it is, I also think there's another version of that, is that I keep track of what's available. And I've been known for decades now in my network and circles that if they have an opening, I know a lot of people that are as potential candidates for them. I know people mm-hmm. that could be really good candidates for them, and I'll send them a personal note saying, this is a really good opportunity. You might want to look at it. I find it as a convenient way to keep in touch with friends and colleagues in my network, And it's not a bad gesture. You say, hey, I was thinking of you for this position. What do you think?
It's a wonderful thing.
And then the other part is that when people are, find themselves out of a job, or like if we do fall into a recession, more people will do it. And I've seen it before. I get a handful of resumes, and if you know of any openings, and so I'm in the kind of the sweet spot, but I've always done it. I've done it for 30 years now. I just kind of keep track of that. Keep finger on the pulse is the right analogy. And it's a way to help other people just here. And, I heard about this opening. You might be great for that. Or I know you're looking, and I ask, what are you looking for? What area, this kind of couple of things like that. And because I'm seeing this stuff all the time, and go, oh yeah, Sarah might like that. Let me send that to her, and there's it's not like I want to be a headhunter and a job placement person or do it for a living, but I find that it strengthens your own network. And I think it's part of pay it forward. If I ever really am in a bind and I need to find a position, I've now got 30 people that really owe me. Think of it selfishly.
Well, and helping other people is a really satisfying accomplishment, satisfying path.
Yeah.
And so it's always a good thing. And let me build on an experience I had at General Motors that aligns to this. In fact, I'll introduce it this way. We were at the engineering managers, and that was my position at that point in time, were asked who wanted to help out extra to do recruiting for General Motors. Mm-hmm. And following my own advice, which I gave in my last podcast, always try to volunteer for things that stretch your capabilities, go outside your comfort zone, learn new things. I said, I've never recruited. I will raise my hand. And so they sent me to recruiting school, got a certificate as a qualified recruiter.
Suitable for framing.
Yes, exactly. And then they sent me out along with other people to different campuses around the country. They have certain days at various universities there where the students come by and there's booths and we have ways to interview and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I learned how to recruit, and I learned what companies look for, and because they sent us the techniques we learned were called the STAR acronym, mm-hmm. STAR, and that means situation. Like you describe, if you're an interviewee, you describe the situation, you describe a task that you've done that relates to it, you describe the action that you took and the result. Mm-hmm. And as an interviewer, you looked for the STAR. What is the situation? Or you ask them, mm-hmm. what situations have you been in that da-da-da-da-da? What did you do? What was the result? Yep. So you learn both stars of the STAR system. Yep. And that is, I think, good advice to somebody that's looking for work, is to be ready to talk about situations that were meaningful, tasks that you've done, actions you've taken, and results that align with the type of work you're interviewing for. Yeah,
no, I've interviewed one person, and she was, I was on a research team, and so what'd you do? I took notes. What action did you take? I published the notes. Did you contribute to the results or the experimental design or any of the? And this is for an R&D position. No. The rest of them, did all the work. I just took notes.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. We're Next. Not hiring a secretary here.
Yes, indeed. Well, and there's some general advices about looking for work. One comment I'll make on resume. I don't like traditional resumes. I like what some authors call, in fact, I'll put it in the show notes, a qualifications brief, mm-hmm. where, yes, you identify what you've done, but you also characterize it in the accomplishments that you've done. You implemented this program that reduced the failure rate or whatever. You basically get
it's factual. The value. It's the value part that we talk about all the time. Is what difference did it really make? You ran a test, but so did it make a difference? Did anybody use it? Did it actually contribute to any value? And if the answer is no, then don't put it on your resume.
Yeah, exactly. So when someone hands me a resume to look at, I look for their accomplishments, and I look for the things that I also look for an objective. I like to say, what is your objective?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm trying to get a job. No. What's your objective? What are you going to contribute? What are you passionate about? What line of work do you want to be in?
Mm-hmm.
And so those couple advices about objectives and qualifications, and basically your resume has to be well above. It has to stand out.
I don't know about that. I think, well, this one stood out. We were our engineering group was, and we're sifting through a whole box because our boss was tired of the folks that HR people chucked over to us. And he had a box of like 1,000 resumes. And they're all paper. This is way back. And we're sitting around a table and we're kind of just scanning them through. And any of them that caught your interest, we throw in the middle of the table. And we were looking for good qualifications, good experience, all these different things, criteria that we could look for through a resume. But one of them I read on the bottom of it is additional activities or hobbies or something like that. And she said something about, she wrote not a treatise, a paper she was proud of or something like that, that was the cruelty of duck hunting. Now, it just turns out that our boss was an avid duck hunter.
Oh, gosh.
So it was more of a joke than anything else. And nothing else on the resume, on a quick scan, which is all you get in a resume. And now it's not even that. It's a computer scan. We flipped it over to Ron and said, hey, what do you think? And could you talk to somebody that doesn't like duck hunters? And he says, well, wait a second. She does this. And he read her resume in more detail. She's really a good candidate. I'm going to talk to her.
Okay.
And they had a great chat over the phone, and he was ready to offer to bring her in for the next round of interviews. And then he said, no, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but you have to know that I am a duck hunter. And there was a long pause on the other side. And she says, I probably really couldn't work for you then.
My goodness.
And she would have found out anyway when it was authentic and saved the rest of it. But she was actually a really good, but it didn't come across in the resume. And it was nothing other than the quirk of Ron, she doesn't like duck hunters. That's one for you. And
you brought up an interesting point, and as a segue, I'd like to follow up on this, which is everything is automated now.
Yeah. So
your resume is probably done online, or it's done as part of a service, and whatever you want to call it may not even be called a resume. But what you have to be aware of, because I always like to advise people or coach people to apply for a position or a type of, get your resume towards an industry. So you have an objective. Make sure you study the companies that you're applying to, the type of industries, so you can convert and interpret your experience in their language.
Yeah,
because their automated system is going to look for certain keywords.
Yeah, I say go to the library and get technical papers or trade magazines in that industry, so that you pick up on parts of the language, so you interpret. Communicate what you've accomplished in context that makes sense for that language. If you're a German speaker and you're going to a French company, you probably need to write it in French. Is kind of the over the top analogy. Now, resume is not the be all end all. You can send 1,000 resumes. I actually got a call from a recruiter at HP 2 years after I started there, from a resume that was uploaded into some site against some job. Somehow it got through the filters 2 years after I had actually started work.
Slow system.
So you got to be patient, and with electronics, you can send out 1,000 a day, and the odds are low in that process, in my opinion. But
I agree with that. The odds are low. You don't want to rely on your resume. In fact, segue here is networking.
Yep.
Because I think most jobs are obtained through networking. Yes, resumes are important, and you want to have your resume ready, because someone will say, send me your resume. But the actual open door is going to come through networking. And so you have to cultivate that.
Right. And if you're part of professional development, just being curious, and we've seen it in creativity, the art of, drawing a blank on the name of the book, but one of the things was spend some time doing something you've never done before, or learning about an industry or a process or a technique that you've never been experienced before. If you've never done pottery, sign up for a pottery class on a Saturday afternoon and go try it. Just as something different, not that you're interested in doing pottery for the rest of your life. But if you go to a conference, there's a great opportunity to meet people in different industries. This is, how do you do reliability in a medical device industry? What is there a lot of paperwork? Just be genuinely curious and interested, and then call them up and saying, "Hey, do you have somebody there that I could talk to about openings you have, or how I'd use my experience to translate into that, and just how is this? How do you guys do reliability and just do informal, not asking for an interview, but asking for a chance to discuss what is this field, what is my background, how would that ever fit into an organization like you, or what are you really looking for that's related to, say, reliability?"
Oh, you've really hit on something, Fred, because I don't think you want to come across that you're cap in hand. I'm looking for a job. I need a job. Right. I need a job. You want to basically say, I'm looking to learn more about your industry. I'm looking for opportunities. I want to see where we can interact. You want to basically appeal to people that how they can help facilitate that interaction, and rather than just, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. What can you do?"
Well, yeah, definitely. And I see that on LinkedIn all the time. I'm looking for a job. Send me offers. And I think you're kind of missing a few steps here. As opposed to, I ran into one person he said, I really got this question about, this technique or stuff. I learned a little bit of it in school, but I'm not really sure how to apply it. And got a bunch of nice advice, and then followed up with those people and got 3 job offers because they were curious and they wanted to learn. And it might have been the initial motivation, but the approach was, I'm trying to get better at what I do, and I might need to move to a different industry, a different area, but I'm just curious, how would you solve this in your industry, kind of thing. And
wonderful.
It was, the networking part is not just to find a job. It's also you find a cadre of colleagues and people that are solving problems every day, and they probably solve stuff that's similar to what you're working on and can give you some advice or hints or tips or, ability to be more effective at what you're doing.
So networking is the bigger umbrella, to use that phrase, or it's the bigger subject, and the networking should be part of your life. You should be doing networking a lot, even outside your own company. In other words, professionally network by offering to be on standards committees or other, working on symposiums, what have you.
Yeah. Or evening meetings, local chapters. Yeah. But it's also, if you get a business card, always follow up. Send a message. I put notes right on the back of them. If I know I'm not going to remember what we talked about, I put a quick note, follow up on this, topic X, and
good advice.
Always follow up. Now, I don't always get a response back, but the people that I get responses back, I'm still connected with on LinkedIn, and I go, hey, there's this great opportunity over here, or do you know of any good candidates for, or have you seen this kind of problem before? I mean, I sent 2 messages like that out yesterday. Just asking people, I know you probably know more about this than I do. You have any pointers? And I get questions like that all the time, but network needs to be kept alive.
Well, here's a pointer, because you use that word, and this will be a story on what not to do. So I'm having dinner with someone, was it back in April, I think it was, and this is a person who was looking to change jobs. And he was having trouble. He said he'd tried this, he'd been doing resumes and everything. It's just not working out. He's even had interviews. And I'm thinking to myself, interviews? If you get an interview, then you're getting close.
Yeah.
In other words, so I said, but nothing was happening. Wasn't getting the second. So I said, tell me how the interview went. He says, well, I thought it went okay. Well, so tell me what happened in the interview. Well, we started talking, and I asked them what kind of benefits I would get, what kind of health care they have, what kind of, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, is that what the focus was? He said, well, yeah. And I thought, okay, well, that's why you're not getting a job.
Yeah.
Is the interviews for them to learn about you, how you can add value to their company.
Yeah.
And maybe once you've gone past the point where you're on the second interview, or what have you, you can start talking about benefits, but don't make that your leading discussion.
No, you know you're in good shape when they put the HR representative on the interview list on your second round. And hi, I'm here to tell you about our benefits.
Right.
If they start recruiting you, then you can ask about all these other questions.
Yeah. So that completely changed. Well, I haven't followed back yet to see what happened, but that should help the person out. But keep focused on what you can do for them. That sounds like JFK, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's until it turns tight and they start saying what they can do for you. Then you're in good shape. Then you can ask more questions that are on. Yeah, seriously, it is an interview both ways. But at the start, they have all the cards. Once they're interested in saying, once you get the question is, if we give you an offer, will you accept it? You're probably in way better shape. And I always would respond, well, we'll see. I've got some questions for you. And then, please, yes, and then you have an opening. But if you lead off with that,
there's a certain amount of project management involved. I'll just say this very briefly on the subject of career, what would you call it? Career change or planning. Mm-hmm. And a career plan, job change plan, whatever you want to call it, is like a pipeline. And so, yes, you want to get lots of resumes out. Yes, you want to do lots of networking. And yes, you want to aim for interviews because you want to get as many interviews as you can. And then you want to get as many offers as you can. Mm-hmm. And so the point is to keep in mind the volume part of it, but also keep in mind those stages. It isn't just volume resumes out. You need to get interviews. You need people to talk with you, and then you need to get offers. And so it's very much a project.
But there's also another piece I think we totally miss, and it's worth a few extra minutes on, is a quick story. Is early on, I was coming out of the Army, and I got an offer or a chance to interview on site, and it was a medical device company, and it was button-down suit coats and ties and Dr. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so and Master So-and-so. And, and it was very formal. The interview list was all these surnames with their titles, director of this, champion of that, and all the good stuff. And it was very formal, very stiff, very staid. It was, and you might pick up from my tone that I didn't accept their offer. I did get an offer, but I didn't accept it. And they asked me why. I says, I can't see myself working there. I don't own a tie and I really don't want one. and so when I interviewed with Raychem, it was all first names on the interview list. And I could see myself working with these people. I could respect their ingenuity. I could see, I didn't know much about polymer science, but there were people that really did. And it came across as that it wasn't bragging or it wasn't titles or it wasn't what school they went to. It was, no, we're facing these kinds of problems and we're looking for help in doing this, this, and this. And what do you think of that? And it was very collegial. And for some people, they would hate working there, but I was like, it'd be so cool working alongside these people. And I think I could fit in that group.
You've just outlined better than I did the whole point I was trying to make about the pipeline, which is you want to have lots of options. You want to generate lots of options because, Fred, in that situation, you were able to select which option. Yep. The worst situation to be in a job campaign is you don't have options. You're getting one offer. Yep. And then it's take it or leave it. Mm-hmm. But you want to really work towards lots of offers so then you can pick and choose the way you did.
Well, it's also part of the interview process and your back research and informal discussions during networking and so on. And I learned early on, I really don't ever really want to work at Intel. It just sounded like a pressure cooker type scenario of the impressions I was getting from people I knew there and people that left there. And I was like, I just really don't want to fit into that environment. Yeah, I might do well, I might not, but I just don't see it. But there's other companies, that I was like, not your title, but what you do matters and people respect you for what you accomplish and those kind of what you contribute. Yeah, I could work at a company like that, But you have to know that for yourself, is what works for you. Where do you excel, or where do you feel comfortable? Where do you want to contribute? And keep part of this ongoing search, not just during the interview, is, well, what are those tells that say, yeah, this would be where I'd want to be? Because that plays a big role in it too.
Before we end off this subject, I had two real quick pointers that came to mind. When you're doing a resume or anything, you're filling out an application, don't embellish. Be honest, be factual, but don't embellish. Just tell it like it is, because you don't want to ever get in a situation. There's a lot of reasons, to be honest.
Well, you hear of people getting fired when they claim they have a PhD, and then they say, well, no, you don't.
Yeah, that's
we
right.
actually checked.
It almost always comes back.
Yeah.
And so it may get you through the door, but you're not going to like where the door opens into eventually.
That's right.
The other thing is I tell people to practice I call it the 2-minute speech, which is, you will be asked when you're interviewing or someplace, you'll be asked, why do you want this job? Mm-hmm. What can you contribute? And your 2-minute speech is that. You want to practice that. Just tell it to a wall, tell it to another person. Talk passionately, with great interest, look people in the eye, and tell them why you want the job, what you can contribute to their endeavor, and make it genuine, authentic, and with passion. And that goes a long ways.
And it can't be faked.
Can't be faked. Nope.
Can't be faked. No.
You got to believe it.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a whole episode on interviewing by itself. We just scratched the surface on it. Networking, interviewing, always looking. But I think it's just it's not looking for your next pay raise and then jump company. That will eventually bite you. And I've seen people do it. They're tired of waiting to get a raise in their current company. So they leave for 2 years and come back and they're 2 pay grades up already. And then they run into the Peter principle. Is that the principle? Yeah. Whereas you get promoted to your level of incompetence. And then it's like, now you're just a boat anchor, nothing wrong with boat anchors, but you're not helping. It's a mixture of what is it that you want to do and where do you want to go and where do you see yourself? And there's all kinds of variables and it's unique to the individual. And it starts the moment you are out of school or looking for your first job. It's might be take what you can get and move on from that, make that job better. We talked about it in the last episode. How do you, start where you are and stay within that organization but much of the same advice applies when you're looking to change careers or change companies or whatever. You really got to know yourself and what you are actually looking for. Otherwise, what's the phrase, Carl, is if you don't know where you're going, any road will work.
Yes, right. Well, and if you've got some ideas you want or questions you have on this subject, maybe you'd like to ask one of us a question, and then we'll keep it anonymous. Obviously, we're not going to publicize your name, but we will get back to you, and it could be a topic for us in the future in terms of podcasting. But we do want to hear from you.
Yeah, and you can do that over at accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. A couple of ways you can get in touch with us there. Carl and I are both available, and the other hosts of the show are available through LinkedIn. And we have contact information on our About pages. Lots of ways you can get in touch with us. So spend a little bit of time working with your network and staying in touch with your colleagues and peers and friends out there in the industries. And if you got a question, send it over to us. We'd be proud to be part of your network in that regard. So we'd love to hear from you. So with that, Carl, I think we'll wrap that up. I'm trying to think the last time I updated my resume. I should probably
It's been a long time for me. Well, my job change is probably going to be into retirement at some point.
Well, you can always hope for that, at one point or another. Inflation might make it a little different, but we'll see.
That's true.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, good, Carl. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, Fred.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.